They had fairy tales such as Cinderella, Sleeping Beauty, Peter Pan. They had Tinkerbell. Also, they had horror books, and they had one that was named Trucas, which was about a monster. But the special thing about that, and that I liked a lot, was that it didn't have a text. It was especially for kids to imagine the story, and they could create, and it had an open ending so that they could imagine everything, and they could imagine anything they want at the end. They had poems anthologies, and they had an Edgar Allan Poe's book that was illustrated especially for kids. They even had puppet books. Well, I wanted to buy one because it was super attractive for kids, because it was furry and many kids wanted to touch it. In the library, I loved that the children's section had these cushions on the floor so that kids could sit on them and enjoy the books. And also in that section, all the books were without plastic so that kids could look at them, see the images, enjoy and fall in love with the books. And they had the storyteller was on that section, and before he started telling the story, they could look at the books, they could touch everything. And I think that it's a good idea, because kids can actually be there, and they can be in contact with a book without someone like telling them don't touch that, and that's a good idea. I think most of the prices were reasonable, but some of them were not. For example, I saw a version of The Little Prince that was super expensive, but I saw one of a puppet that was cheap for me. So I think that that can be changed, because if we want children to read since they are little, we cannot give that extreme prices to books. So and also we know that books in English are more expensive than the ones in Spanish. So that's also an obstacle for kids to read in another language. So we have to consider versions, we have to consider illustrations, also that well-known authors have higher prices in their books. But I think the prices in that library are reasonable compared to others. For example, Porrua has higher prices, and I think there is reasonable. My favorite book in the bookshop was Cinderella, because it was different from the known version of Disney. It had different images. The stepsisters were different, because in some point they were not very mean with her, only the stepmother, and it allowed children to see that story from a different point of view, and it helped children to see that there is variation in literature, and that one story can change depending on the version, depending on the author, depending on the images. And many girls and even boys were looking at the book because the images were not so girly and the prints appeared more. And I liked a lot that it was also without a plastic, so that permitted the children looked at the images and they could fall in love with the book without someone there.
I went to El Sotano because it is my favorite bookstore, the one in Miguel Ángel de Quevedo. They have all the books you can imagine, at least in Spanish, but the thing that I don't like is that they have a really tiny space, so all the books look really crowded in there. They had philosophy, sociology, they have even things like natural medicine. They had things for college, they had books for science fiction, they had international authors, and also they had like science authors that those are difficult to find, like Stephen Hawking, or not so well-known scientists. Also, what I like from the Sotano is that they have their own building for the kids section, so all the place is full of children's literature books. And they have any kind of titles also. They have from Fondo de Cultura Económica, they have from, I think it's Penguin Editorial, they have from my favorite author, that is the one of the Crayons Who Quit. But I was looking for the English books, and they have only a tiny space where you can find them. It's only like one shelf, but not the whole shelf, like half of the shelf, and most of them are wrapped in plastic. The Spanish books are without plastic, at least like one or two, so the kids can read them. But that part is not well nurtured and not so fostered, so English books are not their biggest strength. They had a lot of board games, didactic material for learning anything you want, stuffed animals, they had puppets, I even bought one. They have also the alphabet made out of foamy and things that children can put on their fingers and trace the letters or the figures or the numbers or anything they find there. That part of the bookstore was like half a floor, because it's 2 floors the Sotano Kids. So half of the basement floor is destined to didactic material. What I didn't like is that they have a space for kids to read. It's like a reading corner, but the books they have are not really for kids. And the chairs, they have only like 3 chairs, and the rest are broken. And that part, it's like in a really like literally a corner, but it has dirt on the walls. I didn't like it, and I think that doesn't foster children to have them enjoy reading. The book I chose was The Visitor. This book is in English and it has a CD, so you can play the audiobook. So I find that really useful for teachers or even for the children when they're in their home, so they can start learning how to read in the language. The book is fiction. It's about a family, so the kids can relate to it, but the events are not real, so that's why it fits into fiction. It has hardcover and the pages are thick, not as thick as a kindergarten book, so I think that the age range is from 6 to 9 years old. No, I think from 6 to 8 years old, because 9 years old read more complex things. The level is A1, and all the book is written in simple present and present continuous, so I will use it to, after teaching those tenses, to review them and to have children spot the tenses so that they can involve it in a student-centered class. The price was reasonable based on the other prices of the books, because it was 168 pesos and the other books I saw were around 150 pesos. So it's not that expensive, but it's not that cheap. As I previously said, the English books were really few for the space of the bookstore. So I found another book that I liked, that it was called La Ardilla Miedosa, and it had its own puppet. So I liked it really much, because it was wonderful that you can have your own puppet to tell the story, and that the parents or the teachers can use it so that the kids have a more visual and realistic view on the story. Nevertheless, it was too expensive for my consideration. The price is 450 pesos, so I find it quite hard for parents to buy it for their children in a normal basis, maybe for their birthday or children's day.